All right, we're looking today at chapter 28 of Mounce. It would be aorist, or as he calls them, undefined adverbial participles. So, as we take a look at it, we want to remind you of the exegetical insight that begins the chapter, and then point to the overview. This is always a good point to kind of give you an idea of what's coming. There's a couple of things that I wanted you to note, and that is the participle morphemes. Just want to remind you of those. Those are the things you're going to look for to definitely recognize a participle. That'll work on most of the words. Sometimes the letters change because of the presence of other letters, as you've already experienced, but generally you're going to see that neutral for the active and passive, and then for the middle, the men, mu, epsilon, nu. So make sure you are looking for that. And then just remind you that in your translation, a good starting place is the ing form, whether you're talking about adverbial or participial. Follow, he gives you some suggestions on some words that you can use in translation. But if you want to help yourself kind of get to where you need to be in understanding the meaning in the context, then start out with the ing form and then go from there. In the introduction, he points out that the basic difference in the present adverbial and aorist adverbial they're going to be two of them, the participle's form and the aspect. The aspect, of course, for the present is continuing action, and the aspect for the aorist is going to be the undefined action, sometimes called point action, but unless you are using a very broad definition of point, sometimes it is a particular point in time, sometimes it looks at the whole of the action, and so probably undefined would be a better word, as he points out. As you look at the Greek grammar, I want to remind you that past tense is not important. In fact, time of the action is not important beyond the indicative mood. Now, we'll learn that more later as we look at some other moods. That is also true of the participle, which is not the indicative mood. So you want to make sure that you keep your mind on that when you're thinking about the participles, about in fact, all of the verbs. Take a look at that. He suggests using after, as you can use while. As the translation for present participles, he suggests after for the aorist participle. And again, that certainly is true, but don't forget to depend on that ing translation for all of them. That kind of gets you started. He points out that the augment is used only in the indicative mood. There's a very simple reason for that, because that's the only place that time matters. And so you won't have an augment here, so you don't have to look for that. And then he talks about unaugmenting. I would not worry about that. I'd just think of the signs of the participle and remember the fact that participles do not use an augment. There's some that are going to be a little difficult. Again, when you run into, as you read in section 28.6 about some of these, my best advice to you is use the tools that are available, and that would be either your electronic tools or an analytical lexicon, because that lexicon has the form of every participle, every verb, every noun, and so forth, as it is used in the text of the New Testament. So that can also help you. But just keep that in mind, if you will. Not looking for you to have a whole lot of dependence on these tools at this point, because they're just some things you need to learn. But in the case of these very rare and very unusual forms, I would say that would be a good tool to have at hand. Now, you're going to have a number of paradigms here, but again, most of this you've already learned. most of the forms, the endings and so forth, stems and endings, you've already learned. You've already learned, for instance, in 28.7 that sigma alpha is the sign of the aorist, the first aorist active, and you're gonna see that there. So anyway, what I suggest here is that you don't try to memorize all of these forms, but that you note some of these things. The stem, the endings, they're going to be, depending on what you're talking about, it could be the first, second, or third declension. Your masculine and neuter actives are going to be third singular. Your middle and passive are going to be second singular and plural, be singular and plural, of course. And then the feminine is going to be first, first declension. So you got third declension for the masculine and neuter in the active. You've got the second declension, like the normal first masculine and neuter that you learned, the asuoan and an-uoan endings. That's going to be in the middle participles, and then you're going to have the first declension, the feminine endings that you had in the first aorist active. So anyway, just pay attention to that, and you will learn to recognize these. That's going to be the main thing all the way through in all of these paradigms. And then when you look at the first aorist passive participle, you'll note that, as it is true in other aorist forms, it's going to be different than the middle. So you've got the present, the aorist active, the aorist middle, and then the aorist passive, and all of those have distinct form. Use your also, I would point out that the sign of the aorist passive in participles is theta epsilon instead of the theta eta. And so just note that in 28.10. Use your halftime review as a review. Just a good time to go back and make sure that you understand. If you take the time to do that, it will be time that is well spent. So make sure you understand those things and can recognize them. The remainder of the lesson deals, first of all, with the second aorist, and that, of course, is going to be the same thing that you've already learned, and the sign of that is going to be the changed stem. And, of course, there's no augment. He gives you some comparisons to the second aorist and the present, and you need to note those, and what he's pointing out to you is that the stem changes as usual in the second aorist. So if you look at those paradigms on pages 262 and 263, make sure that you're noting those things and learning to recognize them. That's going to be the main thing. Pardon me. And then he's got a section beginning at 28.15 on odds and ends. And just note those things. I would take that little chart at 28.16, put it in your notebook. That would be helpful. Then you've got your summary, and I'm sorry, 28.16 is also continues on the top of the page. Be sure to note that. Then you have your summary, and that still is not complete. You want to still keep it, yes, but you're going to see it complete just a little bit later on. So we'll point that out to you then. All right, so we look at your vocabulary, and beginning on the bottom of page 265, and the words are aspadzomai, grammatus, hieron, kradzo, uki, padion. It's another word for child. We met techneon a little bit earlier, and you have padion here is the diminutive form of it. And then spero, which is the word for iso, the verb for iso. Read your advanced information again. I encourage you to read that, and especially read through that about the future participle. Again, learning that as you go along is going to be the key to that. But read these and note, don't worry about memorizing things in that situation. Exercise in chapter 28 is going to be parsing as usual, and then you will have the translation exercise, and that'll be sentences 6 through 10, as is noted in your in the assignment schedule in your syllabus. So pay attention to that. Take a look at the PowerPoint. You'll have some detailed instructions there as you work through this chapter. And of course, if you have any questions, just contact us if you will.